It's a Friday. People aren't in work mode or video viewing mode. It's end of the week. Everyone's got their little edge on, their little clucking on. It's Friday. It's the weekend. It's time to go out and release some of that pressure that built up during the week. And I'm not knocking anyone for that, by the way. I don't ever go at people who take drugs. I think drugs. Let's talk about drugs. People take drugs, and the law says it's illegal. They try to tell us what our rights are, what we can do to our bodies, what we can put into our bodies. What the law is here to do and should do, really, is protect people and allow us to take action against other people and to uphold those laws. And very few of them they are. Don't cause harm to another person, don't cause damage to property, and don't do fraud in business. And that covers quite a wide range of areas. In fact, it covers everything. That's a common law. Everything else are just statutes, legislation that they put in place in order typically to enrich themselves. Let me explain quickly the mechanics behind a statute. And this is really in really real simple terms. Obviously, some people don't understand simple terms, just like some people don't understand complex terms. Not to say they're above wherever position they are, but complex terms. Me and a friend may say, listen, I've got an idea, we can make some money. If we implement a new statute, we can pull money in. So what we say is, okay, I know, let's stop the British people from drinking alcohol in public places. And he says, that's a great idea, we'll do that. So now we introduce a new statute, and that says people cannot drink alcohol in public places, in designated places. If they try to do it, throughout the whole UK immediately, then people wouldn't be happy. So what they do is they introduce, hello Rosita. So they introduce this new statute, and it costs, quite a few bob to implement, and they get one of the wealthy elite to bankroll them. They put it into place, and now they send their bully boys, the police, around and say, right, every time you see someone drinking in one of these designated places, arrest them, take them to court, and we'll take £50 from that person as a fine. And this just goes on continually. So they pull back their money, they pull back the original money that they spent getting this into place, advertising it, and all the parties that are involved. Then after a few years, £50 fines are being paid. Imagine 5-10 years later, people are still paying £50 just for drinking alcohol in a public place. And that's how the statutes work. They're very rarely for our own safety. The statute never says, let's stop people drinking alcohol because of health reasons. As much as they have the evidence that alcohol or excess alcohol is harmful, they'd rather tax people for simple things. I know, let's make people wear seatbelts and tell them it's for their safety. They don't care about your safety. A seatbelt, a statute is there so they can pull money in. And then they have people standing on the side of the roads just simply stopping you and making you pay £50. And on a deeper level, I'll get back to the drugs. It's the same with speeding and anything. In the UK, under common law, really, there's no speed limit. You can drive as fast as you want, but you have to be responsible and you have to be careful how you drive, especially when you're in smaller towns and so on. So what they do is they introduce a statute. It says, right, okay, if anyone drives any faster than this, then we'll take money off them. But truthfully, and you can do some research on this, there is no speed limit in the UK. They're just statutes, and you don't have to comply with them, and they really shouldn't be able to prosecute you for going faster than 70 miles an hour. But back to drugs. What's wrong with putting something into your own body and your right to enjoy your life and do what you want? Now, people say things like, but people get drunk and they fight. And that's where the harm is. Fighting somebody and harming somebody, that's the crime. Drinking the alcohol isn't the crime. If you take ecstasy, where's the crime? And then they only way they can win the minds of people with is an appeal to emotion and saying things like, somebody died, so we'll ban them. But people die from smoking all day long, and people have illnesses, but they can tax cigarettes, so they'll let you smoke as much as you like. As long as they can tax it, you can smoke. It's like in the US, they realise, they can tax marijuana. So the people at the top who are funding this and making the new laws and passing legislation and letting people build on their land, they're just making money from it anyway. While there's people in prison who are serving life sentences for their third strike and out law that they introduced, which was really just to increase the prison population so they can get workers making flags and, clothing for US troops free. And people don't care because people say, oh, but they're criminals. And we tend to lump these criminals all under one banner. Oh, but they're criminals. And when you look into many of the cases, you think this guy was a petty shoplifter. He got caught twice, and then he got caught for marijuana on his third offence, and now he's in prison for life. Slave labour in prison work camps. So you can understand that they take drugs too. Prison's full of drugs, once again, and you can get even heroin in prison. And once again, I'm not saying that any drug's worse than the other. You do what you want. I know people who take heroin. I've met people who've taken every other drug. The issues that they do cause is that one type of drug has a dependency that's much higher than the other, and in order to fund that, it often leads to crime. But there's a middle drug, which I always speak out against, but once again, I'm not against drugs. I'll stop saying that in a moment. Cocaine doesn't really do that mad harm like some other drugs, but the harm comes in the finances. It's like taking medication, and I see people stupidly spending all of their wages on cocaine, and all it does is it doesn't quite kill you, cocaine, but it makes sure you're part of the labour force. You have to keep on going to work to fund your habit. And it's the same with alcohol. Alcohol kills loads of people, but really, really slowly. So the government doesn't mind. They'll sell you alcohol all day long because they can also tax that. But all the other drugs like MDMA and all the happy drugs, I'm like, get some in, Like, what's nicer than seeing people hugging each other, people getting on with each other, and people being good to each other and changing the way they view the world and being kind. Same with natural drugs like marijuana and mushrooms as well. Go get some. You'll change your perspective on the world. Marijuana keeps us nice and passive. But the issue with marijuana for the government and the controlling people is that when you take marijuana, you suddenly see the light and you don't want to be part of that system anymore. But with alcohol, you drink, you fight, you fuck, and then, you get up for work the next day, and the government can, and they can tax it, and they tax it very highly, so they'll keep you on alcohol for as long as you live. I'm not sure if they still show alcohol adverts at the cinema or on telly. Do they? I don't watch telly. Do they still show alcohol adverts on telly? I know they banned cigarettes a long time ago. When we were young, we just thought it was cool to smoke. You'd be watching like Alex Higgins playing snooker, and his opponent, and they're puffing in between rounds, and you see Michael Parkinson doing an interview with someone, and the person's smoking, and everything was about smoking and about how cool it was. And the Americans, they were likely hit even harder than we were. And you may have seen the advert, but there is an advert which actually says, 9 out of 10, or 8 out of 10 doctors prefer a Marlboro. So you can imagine, for the confidence we have in doctors, doctors tell the truth. Doctors are honest people. They're great people. They heal people. If your doctor smokes Marlboro, you're smoking Marlboro. Even if you don't smoke, you think, what, I might get into that. But, that's drugs. And drug use is often for escape, like cigarettes. A nicotine hit, apparently, is the same every single time you have a new cigarette. But we kind of get accustomed to it, so we don't feel it so much. But sometimes if you lay off the cigarettes for a couple of hours or maybe a few days, and you have one first thing in the morning, boom, it makes you giddy. And that's because it's a poison. It's got such a tiny, tiny percent of nicotine, which kills every other animal that smokes it, by the way. But they put just enough in just to make you giddy, just to get you that feeling. And so you keep on smoking. And sometimes it's not, powerful enough. You take 3 or 4 cigarettes, and there's an argument that cigarettes are a gateway drug because it's true. I used to think to myself, oh no, they say this thing about one thing being a gateway drug or another, but it's true. For everyone who's taken drugs, think about it. And I'm not talking about you people who take, I tried cocaine once and I didn't like it. If you've tried cocaine once, you've not tried cocaine. With cocaine, you've got to keep on taking it until it suddenly grips you, and then you're like, whoa, and then you know what it feels like, you know what it's about, and then you stop. But once you've got that far, you can't stop. And I can see that with all of my friends, okay? I've got a really high tolerance, a strong tolerance to everything. I'm not an addict in my mind. In fact, the only thing, I am an addict. I mean, we're all addicts to one thing. I'm an addict to tobacco. I don't smoke that much, but I get the odd roll up in, and I'm an addict to that. I've been able to give up several times, to stop for 2 years. I stopped recently again for 8 months. and then I got back on them. But I never stress. I never go like, oh, I need to give up, and then try and find ways. I just stop, and that's it. But then, after 2 years, 8 months in the last case, I think, oh, I fancy a cigarette. I don't even stress and go like, oh, I shouldn't smoke. I just smoke. We're all going to die anyway. And the other stuff, I've tried one or two. I wonder if my kids are watching this. Yeah, I've indulged. And yeah, I've had a great time. Talk about mind expansion, boom. But drugs have to be used correctly, because many people are victims to drugs, and there's no point denying that you're not a victim. You're a victim. You know, I've seen people and they think they're happy with drugs, but really the drugs to them are an escape. You know, they take the drugs purely to escape from the reality of life, and I can understand that because life's tough. But if you put the effort into carving out a life, then your dependency on drug, you know, decreases. I've got a friend who's watching this show right now. Amazing guy. We went to school together. We were the best of friends at school for a while. We used to sleep at his house lots of Saturdays and so on. And you know, he was a smart kid. For people who didn't know him, you may not have thought he was. But he was really smart, and now he's doing amazingly well. And like, he's in his 50s, and he enjoys golfing. And you know, like, I'm not saying golfing's a be all and end all, but you know, if you've got time to walk around on this big loads of grass, just whacking small balls around, then I think you've done well in life. And he does plenty of that, and he's always out. He, you know, travels abroad. He's got a great job, and he's carved his life for himself. He was always a rebel at school. I think this is why we got on. He had his own mind. He was smart enough to understand what he was being taught, but I think from a very early age he also knew that he didn't want to take part. And I think if you pursue a life like that, then you take lesser drugs. Now, it's not about just pursuing the life. Obviously, people sometimes take drugs, because even pursuing a life like that sometimes is hard until you hit the point, and you may look for that escape. And that may be an alcohol, which is the most accepted drug. You know, people take alcohol, and people don't frown on them so much unless they're, you know, like a hardcore alcoholic. But on that note, that's enough about drugs. I've got a show planned, a video for YouTube, which talks about drugs alone. But I started off talking about the Crown here, and the real power of the UK, who runs the UK. If anyone wants to change a subject or topic, talk about it, let me know. You've got 30 seconds. If not, then I'm going to sign out.
So baby, I will be listening to OBG.
Okay, and on that note, thanks for listening. I'm the OBG. I don't think people really know the true hypnotic power of television. You know, how it pulls us in and just keeps telling us to consume, buy, and tells us to hate each other and separates us and causes the greatest divides, all under the name of entertainment. And every time I turn on my TV, it's just like no surprise. It's all of those programs in there.